So thank you for the staff, Randy and Tim and Mark and Craig, for allowing us into the Shawnee County system so that we can broadcast a little more fully this information, okay? I know we're all on pandemic lockdown kind of mode, so that's where we're at.
Terry, this is Dick. I was wondering, are any of the commissioners, any of the three commissioners going to be listening to or participating in this?
No, not to my knowledge. I'd have to ask Mark or Craig if they signed up, because they had to sign up to get, well, they could just go onto our link and listen to us. So they might.
Terry, I told all three of them that this would be streamed tonight on YouTube, that they can watch it there.
We kind of had to, after the news article about the ice rink, we felt like we needed to make it a little more available to the public. So I appreciate staff stepping up to make that happen. Okay, it's 5:31. We can go ahead. I believe we have a quorum. Kathleen, can you go ahead? Do you have the roll call?
Yes, Judy Gates,
I'm here.
Teresa Miller, Joe Ledbetter, Jim Martin.
Here.
Eric Cortez,
Here.
Laura Burton,
I'm here.
Ty Henston. I'm Kathleen here. Terry Roberts.
Here.
Nick McKenzie.
Here.
Derek Fairleg.
Here.
Dick Petterman.
Here.
TJ Brown. Casey Clark.
Here.
And Susan. Come on, Randy, speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen. I didn't hear you.
Okay.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, is that Teresa?
Yeah, I'm trying to get on the Zoom. I can't get on the Zoom. It keeps just showing me the meeting from this in the morning.
Okay, so, all right, so Teresa, you can also get it, go on how we normally watch it's on YouTube.
Right, YouTube is the one I've tried to get on, and I can't. It shows this Monday morning's meeting, county commission meeting.
Okay, I'm going to ask one of the staff to forward you that additional information that's on the website that takes them to that to the actual link for Shawnee County. I actually sent it to two people who emailed me about an hour ago, because they said, well, it's not going to be an open meeting. I go, oh yeah, it's going to be an open meeting. And I said, I copied and pasted off the website. So Teresa, we'll try to get that to you, okay?
Okay, I appreciate it.
Is there anybody else?
Thank you.
I see Jim Kraut has joined us.
Yeah, there's Joe
Ledbetter. Joe, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I'm listening to you by phone.
Okay,
Can
great.
you hear me?
Okay, yes. Okay, so that's Joe and Teresa added. So looks to me like we have enough to get started here. So the first agenda, I welcome everyone. Thank you for participating. We have the minutes from the minutes from the November meeting that we need to approve. And they are very lengthy. We had, as you know, kind of an exhaustive discussion about the Overland Station report. So thank you for those detailed minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion. I've read those minutes fairly closely. I think we got it right. So yeah, I ask to approve.
I second them.
So it's been moved by Dick, seconded by Teresa to approve the minutes of the November meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. The next agenda item is the director's report.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I'll try to be brief, but I do have several things I'd like to cover. Just sort of an update on what we've been up to and what we're beginning to work on now. It's been a while since we've met. Jeremy Myers and our Park Operations Division are working with the foundation. They're working with the foundation to try to, I'm getting a little feedback here. I think if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Jeremy Myers is working with the foundation to try to put in some trail markers along the Shunga and the Landon Trail. These would show where you were, mile markers per se. And so we're in the middle of that. We're replacing outdoor basketball courts at Ripley and Cushenberry Park. And if you remember, we approved Cushenberry quite some time ago, but we're hoping to get a little cost savings out of combining the two and doing them at the same time. We're replacing roofs at Blaisdell Pool, the Preston Hale Room at Old Prairie Town, and the Abbott Community Center, which is, as you know, run by the Boys and Girls Club of Topeka. So new roofs for all those locations. The AutoCast Tour app is up and running at Old Prairie Town. So that allows you to go to Old Prairie Town and using an app to do a guided tour. And I've yet to even experience it myself, but I'm excited to go see what that's all about. The rail cars outside of Old Prairie Town are scheduled to be painted this spring. We're replacing the deck at the Garden House at Lake Shawnee. That's in progress right now. And for those of you that have maybe never seen that deck, it's a pretty big deck. It's a pretty big project. We're also repairing 3 sinkholes out at Lake Shawnee that have been there for a while and really needed to be addressed. So that's happening. Well, it was happening. I'm not sure how this recent weather has affected it, but we hope that'll be done this week or next. The irrigation pump at Lake Shawnee Golf Course, that's something we've talked about a couple of times. That's in progress. We're waiting on the equipment to be delivered, and once it gets here, it should only be a 2 or 3 day installation. So excited about that. We're repainting, we're sealing and repainting the brick of the bathhouse at the Oakland Pool. That's in pretty bad shape, and we're hoping to at least go in there, clean it up, and stabilize it a little bit. We've also ordered a shade structure to be used inside. There's no shade inside that pool anywhere, so a new shade structure and a new basketball goal that's used poolside. So try to do a little bit there. The Crossover Tennis Center, the restroom renovation, we will be discussing that at the February 1st commission meeting, and we hope to get started on that fairly soon. We're still waiting word on some grant application for that project, and hopefully we'll hear something by the 1st, but I'm starting to worry that won't happen. We began plans to do some improvements at the Bark Park at Gage Park, and Jeremy Myers and his group have been working on that. We recently installed a new playground equipment at Country Club Park. So they're off Topeka Boulevard. If you have a chance to drive by, it turned out really, really nice. On February 1st, we'll have 2 new positions starting. We'll have a natural areas steward that will really be, as the title says, will be involved in all of our natural areas, including trails, ponds, the lake, prairie areas. And we hope that this position will bring a little bit more expertise to our operation. So we're very excited about that. And then we also have a new events manager starting for Great Overland Station, also on February 1st. Feel really fortunate to have hired that person as well. We got a master's degree in the, I don't have the exact degree here, but in the field that we think they'll be able to step in and go through some of those, some of the documents, the artifacts, the old photos, all the things that we need to go through and catalog and find a use for, and they'll have some expertise in that area and also in the programming area. So we're really excited. And I think this person will also be able to help us at Old Prairie Town with some of the programming there. So, and then lastly, and then after this, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have. But just wanted to note that, you know, during this last year, obviously our programs and the things that we normally do have been down quite a bit. But there are two areas that really have kind of bucked that trend, and that's golf, where we did 79,000 rounds of golf last year, which is high. Cypress Ridge set a record for the number of rounds. They've done more rounds of golf last year than they've ever done. And then our campground had its most successful year on record. So I think as people were trying to look for things that they could do and be outside and hopefully social distance, those two things definitely benefited from that. So with that, I will turn it over to the group, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
If anyone has any questions, can you raise your hand or a piece of paper so I can target you? The people on the phone, that's going to be a little more challenging. So does anybody?
Terry, I'm
Go
on the
ahead.
phone, so I just have one question for Tim.
Dick has a question.
What's the project or work that you said would be taking place at the dog park?
We're trying to go in right now and look at ways to maybe expand it a little bit. Definitely, I don't know if you've been to the dog park. It's a very popular amenity, and we're happy for that. But when you go in there, the grass is all but gone. It needs a little TLC. So replacing some lights, adding some lights, trying to do something about the turf quality, expanding it a little bit, but we're definitely in the beginning stages of that. So we'll be getting some community input on that, and we're also trying to reach out to potentially to some partners in the community that could help us maybe fund some of these improvements. But we would like to see sort of raise the level of that facility here in the near future.
Follow-up question on that. Didn't the Hills Dog Food Company initially, when that park was created, help out there with some financing?
I believe they did. I mean, it was a long time ago, but yes, I believe they did. And we're working with the Parks for All Foundation to help us identify some strategic partners such as Hills, to see if we could get some interest in getting a little private money to help us improve it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathleen, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. On the disc golf, do you keep track of how much goes on over there? I see it's at High Crest, a steady stream of disc golfers just about every time I go by there. Are you keeping track?
We're not. We don't unfortunately have a way. That's a hard one to keep track of because they don't register. You know, they can walk on and play whenever they want, which is great. We kind of rely on the dusk to dawn. I think it's disc to dawn, but with the disc group to kind of give us a little feedback on what they're seeing out there on a daily basis.
Tim, kind of along those same lines.
Casey, go ahead.
Kind of along those same lines, Tim, do you guys actively monitor or track trail usage? And I know it's a very hard one to quantify.
We do have a couple of spots where we have trail counters installed.
Two.
And so Mike McLaughlin, who works for us, is the one who usually works with, actually I think works with the health department on this and tracking some of that. I don't have any recent numbers, but we can get a feel for it from those two locations. Obviously, it'd be nice to have more, to be honest, so you get a better idea, but at least you can sort of follow the trends that way.
Thank you.
Casey, I just wanted to comment on that. So we had one counter put in, then they put the second counter in, okay? So really the first counter would have gotten us a benchmark where it was placed. So that would be helpful for us to go back to look at when it was placed, maybe the first 2 months, and then compare it to the same 2-month period a year later because of weather and those kinds of things. I forget where the first, there's one over by Shunga. Randy, can you tell me where the other one is that they placed?
No, the one I recall is the one that you're talking about, that 28th engaged, but I can't think of where the other one is sitting at right now.
Yeah, me either. But we do have that, Casey, and we will ask the health department for that data. Mike McLaughlin's our liaison interface for that, and we'll try to get that on the next meeting. That would be a good information, particularly since we've been in pandemic and a lot of people have used the trails, we think, at a higher volume than in previous.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Just based on personal experience. That's why I was curious of the numbers. So thank you, Terry.
Anybody else? Jim?
Question for Tim on the dog park improvements. What kind of dollars are we talking about, and what's the projected life of those improvements?
Well, Jim, we're early. We haven't really put together a budget yet. So we're still tossing around ideas. We did meet with Judy from the advisory board on site to kind of get her thoughts. I think depending on the cost, that will kind of decide which way we want to go. But I don't have that information for you right now, Jim. I'm sorry.
Terry, I have a question.
Okay, Joe, just a minute, Joe. Jim, do you have another question?
Well, I was just curious as to how you're looking at that with respect to the master plan for Gage Park.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, Joe?
Yes, comment and question. It would be nice to have those mile markers on that Landon Trail. It's very sheltered by foliage most of the way. Question, do we have the Landon Trail reopened? It appeared from Kansas Avenue that the railroad's done with its work. Has that trail been reopened? And then I have one other question about picnic tables out of Lake Shawnee.
The trail, we are currently having discussions. I say we, it's actually the county council's office is currently having discussions with the railroad about the Landon Trail and that project. I don't have a lot of information as to where it stands. I know there was correspondence via email going back and forth today. So we, quite honestly, and I see Jim is here, there's a question of whether or not we need a permit to operate that trail now, and
oh my God.
Yeah, if Terry, if it's okay,
Sure, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, that was our response when we first were contacted from BNSF wanting us to fill out a permit application. We are in the process of researching the history of those right-of-ways. And as you probably know, Joe, that's a complicated situation because our trail was rail banked back in the 80s. There has been a continuous operation of a trail in that location. No permit was ever required by BNSF in that area. And they're the ones who reworked the trail as part of a trestle project in that area. So they're the ones who disturbed it. They're now coming to us, wanting us to complete a permit, even though they're not asking for money for that at this time. My experience in dealing with the railroads in other places where we arguably use railroad right-of-way, eventually they come to us and they want money for use of right of way. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. We have pressed BNSF to prove to us that we are legally required to have a permit. So that's basically where we're at. We've sort of lobbed the ball back onto their side of the net and said, well, show us why we are required to have a permit, particularly since we've had a trail there for 30 years and no one's ever asked us for a permit before. So that's where it's at. We don't have a response yet, but it's something that we'll be working on with BNSF on that. My concern, as we've discussed, is I don't think they've completed work that they are required to do to allow us to reopen that section. So we'll stay on it because we want to get it open back up. But we also don't want to just capitulate to the request for a permit, because even if they're not asking for money now, my fear is they will in the future. So that's where that stands.
Okay, well, I understand that, and a permit could make us subservient to them in some way legally, and I certainly would resist that. I think that trail's been hard surfaced for at least 20 years, so show me where they invested one dime to even require a permit. And anyway, my next question, let me move on. Tim knows I stopped out at the lake office a couple weeks ago, and I drove back to the laydown area and saw multiple picnic tables and other things that might be of use. I didn't closely inspect them, but I would love to see any idle equipment we've got that's usable to be put out in the whole park system. I think we've got 103 parks, and I just would encourage that our staff paint whatever, chain them up, put them out in parks, and let people have the use of all that equipment. So that's any comment on that, Tim? I'm open to your commentary on that. I don't know all the condition of that equipment, but it was a lot.
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there, Joe. There's a lot of equipment out there that shouldn't be there, that for one of two reasons. Either one, we need to get it out in the parks and use it because there's new equipment that we just haven't been able to get installed. I know our park planner is working on that right now. There's some swing sets back there we're trying to get out. There's picnic tables that we're trying to get out. And then there's a second group of equipment that needs to be disposed of. That really is not something you want to put in a park, or it might be a stack of old tires, for example, that we have no use for. And so since Jeremy, I've mentioned Jeremy a lot tonight, but since Jeremy and I started here back in the beginning of 2019, he's made a lot of improvements and has done a lot of cleanup back in that area, but we still have a long way to go. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody?
Terry,
Go
before
ahead.
you go on, I just want to briefly answer Jim's question, because Jim brought up the Gage Park Master Plan and how do we reconcile doing the improvements. I think that's a great question. And it's something that we wrestle with every day, because Gage Park is, quite frankly, needs a lot of attention, and not just the dog park. There's other areas, and we really need to get this master plan up and running again. And I have reached out to some of the players here recently, and am trying to gather a little momentum to, as we wrap up the family park master plan, nothing would make me happier than to move right into the Gage Park master plan, because the dog park, the mini train, the tracks of the mini train, the playground, there's a lot of work to be done there, and we're a little bit handcuffed because we don't know the direction we're going. So I'm very sensitive to the point that you bring up, Jim.
So we can possibly look for a March 1 kickoff, maybe?
Nothing would make me happier.
We need the city of Topeka's cooperation. So
Tim, have a
Dick?
question for Tim.
Okay,
Yeah,
Dick.
I was wondering when we start talking about Gage Park, are we dealing with the city or with the Friends of the Zoo, who, if I understand right, may be taking over the operation of the zoo?
Dick, I think we would be working with both of those groups as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Also, I have one question for somebody. Remind me of where the Landon Trail is. I cannot place that one.
It's just east of Kansas Avenue,
Thank you, Joe.
north-south.
I'm sorry, Joe, where was it?
It's east of Kansas Avenue, just back in the woods there. It's it runs north-south from that little Beecher Creek and then to Shunga, south past High Crest, out to 45th and beyond.
Okay, now I know. Yeah, thank you.
It's a long trail. It's a really well-used trail, and right now part of it's closed because of the railroad.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for bringing that up. Do I have any more questions? I have one question of Tim. Tim, the grant for the crossover to pay for part of the redo there, who's that grant to? Who are we waiting on?
We're waiting on, it's a land and water conservation grant, which is a federal grant, and it's administered by Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism. That's how I understand it. And so I think it's the information that I've received is that we're waiting on the federal government to give us word.
And it's kind of a pass through the State Department?
That's how I understand it, yes.
Okay, all right. I was curious to know that. Thank you. Okay, if seeing no more questions here, we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the presentation by HTK. So, and we have, I'm going to mute myself. And so we have Zach and Brian here to do that presentation. And they're going to share the screen so that we can see what it is that they're proposing and talking about. Thank you.
I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of kick this off a little bit. As you know, we're getting close to the completion of this plan, hopefully. We've been working on it for some time, and as we go through these slides and look at what we put together, I just want to sort of set the tone that, this isn't complete. This is the second time we've been back to the advisory board because we want your input. We want the input from the general public, and we've received a lot of input from the general public. So we've tried to address what we can in this plan. We do know that whatever what you see here will ultimately need to be phased in over time, because even if we were to receive all of the money that has been discussed from a bond standpoint, we wouldn't have enough to complete this plan. So it will need to be phased in over time, regardless of how it ends up. But with that, I think I'll turn it over to Zach and let them show you what we put together.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Tim. Can everybody, hear me and then see the screen as well that I have shared?
Yes, you're good on, you're good on sound. You're good on screen.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I will get started here. As Terry mentioned, there are three of us actually representing the design team here tonight. Myself, Zach Sneathen at HTK Architects, Brian Sturm at Landworks. The two of us are going to kind of tag team and walk through this presentation. We also, Kevin Holland from Cook Flatt and Strobel is here as well on the meeting tonight too. And really this is, as Tim mentioned, this is kind of that first presentation of what's labeled as a draft master plan, and it's really a draft until it becomes adopted. And so this is kind of the culmination of the last 6 months or so of work, or starting the culmination of that into kind of a final master plan for this park. And so tonight I really want to just kind of share a few thoughts on kind of walk us everyone through where we've been through this process and what some of the activities that we took through this process, and then start to share those views of the master plan and what those plans for the park start to look like. And I'm really excited to share this. I'm a part of this community, and I think this project's important to me, and seeing kind of what potential and what opportunities for Topeka and Shawnee County exist with the development of this. And so as I start off kind of talking about really recognize who all from a county standpoint has really been involved in this process and helped us as a design team connect us up with those entities within the county that we need to be talking about or talking to and getting input on, as well as the staff at Parks and Rec have really spent a lot of time working with us when we did the design charrette back in September, and then continually throughout this process, really kind of a good dialogue between the design team and Parks and Rec staff, and have kind of through this process, as well as presenting to this board. We've also presented several times to the Board of County Commissioners and seek their feedback along the way as we've gone. So just to kind of recap, I shared this really when we kicked this project off. Some of those objectives that our team was tasked with in developing this master plan is really how can we step through a process that seeks input from members of the community, constituents in the community, to really understand what people are interested in seeing in this park, and taking that feedback through various events that we've had in the past, and really starting to use that to shape some of the options and develop different scenarios, study different scenarios of what the park could be, and then really going back to that community and getting their feedback, ultimately refining an option that becomes that kind of preferred master plan. And so this is kind of, as we get towards that end of with that ultimate goal of having being able to open a new destination park in Shawnee County. So as we get towards the end of kind of that, the refinement of the master plan, seeking input as we continue to go forward, as well as then developing plans for implementation. So just kind of where we started back in the end of July, kind of kicked this off. And if you recall, some of those steps were reach out to the community, get input, taking that input and then developing some concepts around that input, and then going back out to the community. So as we started this off and presented at the end of July with the county commissioners, and then opened it up for that public survey that started to seek interest, what the public's interest is in this park, seeing in this park. And at that time, we came and talked with this board, as well as hosted a couple different pop-up community input sessions. This one happened to be, that I have a picture here, was back in August out at the Midwest Aquatics Park. And from that survey, that information, Brian will share a little bit about kind of recap of what we heard in that survey. We went in September and worked through a design charrette, an all-day design charrette with Parks and Rec staff, to really come out of there with 3 concepts that we saw, and we shared those concepts with you back in September. And then the next step was to take those concepts out and seek community feedback on those concepts, ask people what they liked, what they thought was missing from the plans, and really start to hone in on what that final development plan might look like. And in that process, we also held two pop-ups, one at a soccer tournament at the Betta Sports Complex the end of October, And then Gage Park on Halloween, when they had Boo at the Zoo going on, we were set up along with the Wreck and Roll van, and actually caught a lot of people that were on their way into Boo at the Zoo and or coming from that, and were able to share with them really the plans and share with them information about the survey that was out. And after that, we collected the feedback from that process that we really started in November and December on kind of that concept refinement process, and started to look at budget and what that overall master plan looks like. And that really brings us to today, where we're gonna in a little bit start to share those images of the master plan. And this time, I think Brian's gonna start to talk a little bit about what we heard through this process from those
Sure.
surveys and other interactions.
Yeah. Board members, I really appreciate your all's time tonight. I'm glad that we have this opportunity to present this information to you, and we look forward to getting your feedback. We got selected for this project at the tail end of February, and actually had a kind of a scoping meeting in early March. And then, the world kind of changed on us. Fortunately, we had a great engagement process already figured out that's really worked well to get feedback from folks in spite of the pandemic. As Zach mentioned, we kind of conducted 3 sort of digital survey efforts, as well as some really small, more informal, in-person gatherings. Our first survey, which, fortunately garnered over 1,500 responses from folks, was all about gauging folks's, simple desires for what could happen at Family Park. And this chart here, breaks down some of the amenity or facility types that folks who took that survey said they wanted to see. And you'll see with the wealth of choices, we got a wealth of responses, and there are a whole lot of desires there that split up to 5 or 6%. You can see that things that kind of rose to the top were some of the more simple park amenities that we all expect in a big park, like shelters or picnic areas. People tended to range more towards, passive rec and natural amenities. We see natural wilderness areas rating high. We also see things like fishing ponds, gardens, a sled hill rating high, as opposed to maybe more, structured amenities like a skate park, So we also had time during the early part of this project to reach out to some kind of key stakeholder groups, folks who we know from just being part of your community that have had kind of an eye on this piece of ground. We took time to reach out specifically to communities that sort of represented, the golf interests, hockey, off-road biking, BMX biking, pickleball, and even horseshoes. And some of these bullet points are the things that we got out of our conversations with members from those groups. Zach got a chance to meet with you guys earlier.
Yeah. So, and I can take, and at one of those kickoff meetings with the advisory board, we really shared some ideas, but then also talked about when we think of this as a destination park and some of those amenities. Again, this is very indicative of the whole process that we went through in terms of asking people about what are some of those amenities that they would like to see in this. And a lot of it, I think we can all agree that, to create a destination and a destination park at that really means something that is something that sets it apart from any other park in the community, but also maybe even sets it apart from any park in the region, so that it really truly becomes an anchor and something that draws people and people of all ages from not only this community, but from the larger region as a whole. And so through this process, what are some of those amenities when they think about a destination park? What are some of those amenities that people might like to see. And what I've got on the screen is just a summary of what we talked about or what we heard from this board when we met, as well as the kind of the images and the word image in the background is really that kind of word cloud summary of some of the raw survey data that we found, and started to, as Brian mentioned, looking at we heard a lot about some of those, really a lot of that kind of passive amenities or passive amenities within the passive recreation amenities within the park that really people saw a strong interest in.
Yep. You know, we've already started to sum up what we see here on this slide. You know, there was from our conversations and our surveys with the greater Shawnee County community, we saw that people are really desiring kind of a chance to get back to nature, use this park as for more passive uses as opposed to highly active ones. There was support for sure in some very key specific sport areas, and that plays out in the master plan. But accessibility, also an underlying design factor. I think we understood people really wanted the opportunity to, come out and explore all of this acreage and really be able to, experience the whole property. From our, specific conversations with Shawnee County Parks and Recreation staff, we spent a good bit of time understanding how this park can not only interact with, but also support its adjacent neighbor, the Cypress Ridge Golf Course. And if there were needs within the Cypress Ridge Golf Course complex, could those be addressed, with the family park property? And a host of other programming opportunities that we could incorporate into this park. All along we've known that a phase plan would be important for a number of reasons. One we list here also design input. We knew from our partners at Cook Flat and Strobel after taking a closer look at this property that creating large ponds, retaining large amounts of water on this site, while it might be possible from a topographic and hydraulic standpoint, it could have a negative impact on downstream resources, particularly the ponds and water hazards on the golf course. So that definitely played into how we sort of put things together in the final master plan.
And I think then just kind of that notion of also that there was a lot of input through this process, and we're not going to be able to achieve everything that everybody wants to see in this park. And I think as we've worked through the process and looked at some of those things those amenities that really make this this park a destination and appropriately outfitted.
These are some of the images from kind of the earlier phase of design. One of those images up there on the top right, or excuse me, top left, is our site inventory. Staff from Landworks and HTK visited this property multiple times, walked almost every inch of it we could get through back in the summer. It's a little bit easier now to amble through some of that than it was then. And just made sure to have a really good handle on the vegetation types, some of the soil conditions, certainly how water's traveling over and across that property, and just what some of the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats are for out there. It's very thickly wooded right through the middle of the property. There's kind of a crease. There's sort of a valley there. You have not only some established trees, but a lot of typical old field successional growth happening through there. A lot of tall grasses, a lot of cedars, a lot of pears. There are a couple of streams that feed this property and sort of converge in the middle and then continue to meander towards the south, towards the golf course. While the property doesn't have a tremendous amount of grade change because of its size, it does feature about 90 feet of fall from its high points to its very low points. The property drains well. There's not a whole lot of wetlands or real sort of bottomland in there. But there is that valley in the middle that's pretty thickly wooded. You know, the great thing about the property is sort of wild and undeveloped as it is. It's got, you know, great access. It's got two really established arterial roads on the east, on the north. There's sidewalk for quite a bit of that frontage already today. And there's, you know, there's residential development just there on the west that's been there for years. And that's something that we've paid attention to the whole time. Trying to find ways to bring folks to this property on foot is always a priority. And so trying to establish a potential pedestrian connection to that neighborhood is important. People know this park today because of the aquatic center that's been out there for a few years and has been successful. That's certainly a big feature on this property and something we were trying to design around and with. The golf course being the other major recreation amenity in this immediate vicinity, and really the park's kind of largest neighbor. The images there along the bottom are kind of three of the different concepts that got developed during our full day charrette with staff. We had, you know, members from all three of the design firms in this team at that event that day, and just spent a lot of time talking and scribbling and drawing. We took those charrette, those sort of just, you know, drawings that were put together in a matter of hours, refined them a little bit, put some labels and, you know, titles and a scale to them. And those became initial concepts, the options on the top half of this screen. Those sketches were put into a digital survey that was given to the greater public over the kind of middle part of October. People had about 3 weeks to take a look at those concepts, kind of vote on their favorite one. The things we paid a little bit more attention to were, you know, what were the amenities people most desired out of those concepts, and what were amenities that folks thought were maybe superfluous, maybe, you know, didn't need to be out there. Of course, we also asked the question, what amenities, you know, on your favorite concept are maybe missing? You know, what would make this concept a little bit better? We spent some time in early November taking a look at those results and actually, going with what kind of appeared to be the preferred concept, but tweaking it that much more, starting to understand that there'd be, priorities even within that concept. What would maybe be most easy to develop first? How would we position some of these different park amenities in a way to make them constructible and workable in the near term? That's what some of those sketches there are on the bottom.
So I think, you ready, Brian? You ready
yeah.
to sound the trumpets? And if I had some music on my transitions, now would be the time to play it. But so kind of as transition from what Brian was talking about in the development of it and the evolution of those concepts really brought us to where we are today, kind of showing, sort of unveiling that draft of the master plan for the whole park. And I think, Brian, if you want to take a little bit to just kind of step through some of the key amenities and kind of major activity hubs of this park. And then we've got some images to share, rendered images to share kind of more at a little bit of a ground level view of the park. And then we'll circle back around to this plan and then really open it up to discussion or questions, or kind of turn it back over to you all.
Yeah. As far as giving a tour of this park, I think I'll start by saying we heard from, the multiple rounds of survey and engagement we did that, some of the biggest priorities for this property were destination play. And when park and rec folks talk about destination play these days, they mean a really big honking playground. People want to go out here and play. And people also at the same time want to be able to go out here and simply stroll and walk and hike and enjoy, time outdoors. So I really feel like some of the biggest features in this plan have to do with play as well as trails. But I'll step back from that and we'll talk about this park in terms of its kind of activity nodes, because you can sort of think of this park in sort of 4 or 5 big chunks. Start up sort of in the northeast. This is probably the park's most active node. We already have the existing aquatic center, which is, bustling with activity for a good 3 or 4 months out of the year. We pair with that, really ample sized parking lot and existing access point on Urish. Some of the park's other more active amenities we've got on the very, eastern edge there along Urish. We have a 16-court pickleball complex that would afford, not only plenty of spaces for gamers, but seating and some shade structures and opportunities for folks to sit and spectate. We have just to the left of that, an adult fitness area. Kind of think of these as fitness playgrounds these days. That's sort of equipment geared towards, exercise. We have sort of just to the left of that, a sort of a lawn space. We call it the Great Lawn on this here map. It's really just an informal, gathering spot, a place for venue perhaps for, outdoor events, or just a place where people can throw frisbees to their dogs. Then you get to the left of that, this destination playground, a playground that's close to about 1 acre in size and would have a variety of play equipment for a variety of different ages of kids. These areas would be coupled with shelters and restrooms, places where people can, have picnics, have parties, opportunities for the county to draw some revenue, but also places for people just to get some shade. So that's kind of that play quadrant in some ways, for year-round activity. To the southeast, we have, an area that's a little bit more tied into the Cypress Ridge Golf Course. We've developed here a sort of a golf and, golf and activity clubhouse. A new clubhouse to serve Cypress Ridge Golf Course, but also just an indoor venue for community events and gathering space. There'd be a driving range, a new driving range developed for the golf course up here. You usually situate those, near your clubhouse and near your parking lot. And so that's what this corner of the property is planned for. This corner of the property today is already kind of used by Cypress Ridge. Actually, there's a large patch of sod there that they continually use for their operations. So it made sense to kind of focus golf development down here. Moving over to the upper northwest, we have a completely different kind of quadrant of development there up against 21st Street. This was a place where we felt like we could place, a large indoor activity center, kind of on the opposite corner from the other activity. This is the sort of indoor space that could hold an ice rink, could hold, basketball courts or typical gym space, indoor soccer. Any of those sports that are looking for year-round access for their athletes, and of course the parking that comes along with that. Immediately to the south of that, we developed area for different bike amenities, be those sort of the BMX variety. You have a pump track here, which is an outdoor track space that's really geared towards folks on BMX style bikes, where you're literally using the pumping action of these hills and these moguls to propel you around the course. Just to the east of that, we developed a space for what we call a bike playground. This is really geared towards early bike riders, kids who are, just get the feel for two wheels. There are obstacles and tunnels and other features there that the kids can get, enjoyment out of. And then they don't have to take their bike to skate parks and deal with the friction you get between bikers and skaters. Those of us with maybe young kids know how that rolls. Moving to the east, we have kind of another quadrant of activity. We've offered up a space for, a dog park. That's nearly 3 acres of land devoted to dog park. And it could be broken up in a way where you'd have space for small dogs, large dogs, as well as sort of just a flexible space so that you can rotate those uses when turf needs to be repaired or replaced. We developed another playground in that node there for slightly more rugged or rustic sort of nature play or adventure play. Found a space for horseshoe courts over there as well. This part of the park is meant to really kind of blend into the more natural areas that we've preserved, which, the cursor's hovering over there. Really the interstitial space of this park is occupied by trail. Whether that trail takes on the form of a 10-foot wide paved concrete path, or something, a little bit more subtle, a little bit softer, like, a 6 or 8 foot wide crushed stone path that might be more suitable for some of the really interior spaces. We tried to extend, enough trail that folks could really take, a number of different opportunities through the park, and enjoy it in a variety of ways. Whether you're there for exercise, you're training up for a half marathon, whether you're there to walk a child to get them to go to sleep, or you're just trying to enjoy the space for a second time or a third or fourth time. Try to give people options, so they could have a multitude of experiences out here. And these are some of the sort of close-up images of this model we've been sort of staring at like birds from 500 feet up. This would be a look at that destination play space that was sort of in the northeastern portion of the park. These are the sorts of play equipment options that we've been looking at to give folks here in Shawnee County something that they're not going to get at any of the other parks in Topeka today. You see one of the shelters in the background there that would also offer up, restroom space for folks. We certainly can't have a legacy park without places for people to use the facilities. And this is purely conceptual, just a look at options for equipment. Certainly a feature like this in a park like this, you'd probably develop in tandem not only with staff but also playground equipment designers. Usually the stuff that goes into these is not just available on the shelf. It's kind of a custom piece. So look at the nature playground, the sort of secondary play space in the northwestern portion of the park. Again, looking at play pieces here that are really more formed of natural materials, formed out of rock or wood. You'd have climbing pieces here, cable play with those sorts of nets. Still, structures the kids can climb up and down, whether they're wood or whether they're, sort of steel construction. But that was kind of the emphasis of this playground. You can see in the background what that indoor activity center might look like, places where folks might come to, practice figure skating, play indoor soccer. Yeah, and then there, and just in the upper right, left-hand part of the project, you see that sort of bike space, the pump track in the background, the kids' bike playground in the foreground. Yeah, a variety of activities up there. And this is a view of the park from its southeastern corner. We're looking at the new parking lot that would, provide folks entry and access to the new golf and activity clubhouse. Let's look at the clubhouse. The driving range is just sort of there off in the distance as you look to the west. And then as you look towards the top of the drawing, you see the pickleball complex, the 16 courts, the canopies and shaded space for folks who are waiting to play their games to sit. And then, the aquatic center and some of the playgrounds there in the upper central portion of the drawing. There's a feature I forgot to mention here, more in the southwestern corner of the park. There's already today out there, when you walk through this ground, you find all sorts of amazing things. But there's already a place where there's a rather large mound, I'm talking like 15 feet high, that's been built over years of golf course activity and redevelopment of this property. We'd love to be able to amplify something like that. As you go through and do some of the grading in a property like this, you invariably end up with with earth you have to move somewhere. To be able to create a really great mound in that corner that would provide folks the ability to view off into the distance, see the other portions of the park, have that prospect to suddenly look out on this part of Topeka would be a really neat opportunity. That's where this image comes from. Here's a close-up of that bicycle pump track. Facility that would be not only kind of unique for Topeka really, but for the KC metro region. There really aren't too many of these that are built in this corner of the world. It'd be a great addition.
This kind of also shows, you can see that perspective of that kind of mounded area down in the right hand, kind of right middle of this image. But just as you can start to see the terrain that naturally exists within this site. And so as we these amenities kind of all sit at different elevations throughout the site. And really in the last two images, you've also seen, and several of the images you've seen kind of that connecting road that really connects the amenities, connects those two parking lots and access points into the park with a road that goes through, kind of traverses through the park itself.
Yeah, that road was a choice to make early on. I would say, again, you're looking at a picture of the completely finished plan after maybe successive phases of development. If you're going to have both, a kind of a golf and event activity center on one side, and then a sports and recreation activity center on the other side, it's and the possibility for big outdoor festivals in the heart of the park, you're going to want to give folks that option of exiting in more than one direction. So that's really where the road comes in once you get to that final stage of development. And then there you see it, and sort of the background of this shot. This is looking kind of from close to where the aquatic center is today, towards the southwest. You're kind of hovering like a butterfly over the adult fitness area, that fitness playground. And then seeing as you get towards the background, the Great Lawn. That's sort of the size of that space where you could be flying kites, or sitting down and watching some performances, maybe on the patio on the plaza towards the south. And then further in the background there, still along an existing parking lot that provides so much space for visitors, you see that destination play space, that larger playground, and the tops of those towers and structures that kids could be crawling all over. And then really existing trees. I really want to emphasize that the central portion, a good quarter of this park could remain virtually untouched, other than cutting some narrow, ribbons of pavement through them. I think the heart of the park, which already has, creeks, streams rolling through it, and a lot of mature trees, is a real amenity that we wanted to take advantage of as we look to see how this park could develop.
So I think as we close out our presentation, I'd just like to reiterate that I'm, as a resident, very excited about the potential for this park, and I've been excited to be able to work on this. And I think we will, Tim, turn it over to you, and can discuss or take it from here.
Well, thanks, Zach and Brian. I appreciate you going through that for us, and also appreciate all the hard work you guys have put in over the last 6 months or so. So I think what we've created here is fantastic, and it gives a real glimpse of what could be possible on this site. I am open to just opening it up to questions from the board, and I know we have some folks that also want to speak at some point, and I'll let Terry sort of take it back.
Thank you, Tim. So we have some individuals who have made arrangements to speak to us, and I'm assuming, Craig, you're going to let them in.
Correct.
You have that list, and I'll just let Craig let them in, and if they'll make their comments, and then we'll move on to the next presenter. Thank you, Craig.
Our first speaker is Michael Ekton.
Hello. So I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak tonight. I will be very brief. Like the field of dreams, build it and they will come. I believe, as does the rest of our group, that ICE is more than a quality of life issue. It's a hub, a destination, and an opportunity, being the only rink in a 50-mile radius. There's literally no competition for an activity like this, And neighboring communities such as St. Joseph, Missouri, and Kansas City have proven over and over again that rinks can be kept very busy with revenue producing activities such as public skating, learn to skate programs, figure skating activities, curling, hockey, both youth and adult, and hockey camps. There are even rinks that offer sled hockey for those that have a physical impairment. Additional sources of revenue for a facility like this could include naming rights. I've reached out to several individuals that would really appreciate that opportunity. Concession revenue, camps, and tournaments. And while an ice rink in Topeka, Kansas likely won't become the next double quadplex like the Schwann Center in Blaine, Minnesota, will go a long ways towards getting another hockey team to consider Topeka, Kansas, and potentially build a fan base and a practice facility. Without question, having a unique draw to this wonderful master plan. And by the way, I can tell you, I'm very impressed and excited as a 30-year resident of Shawnee County and living not too far away, maybe 5 miles away from this facility. I would be really excited to see this be a success. But I again want to just urge the group to consider the fact that there's a lot of support for a facility like this in Topeka, and being the only rink with no competition just creates an extremely unique opportunity. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make some comments.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Brock Roller.
Yes, thank you for letting me speak. And it's very convenient that I come right after Mike, because I'm going to add on a little bit of information that I have conducted about the possibility of an ice rink in Topeka, Kansas. So as a resident of Topeka for a very long time, I have certainly encountered quite a few individuals that feel Topeka is too small for a rink. And so what I did is I actually have looked for every municipal area in Kansas and every surrounding state. And what I have found is Topeka is actually the biggest metropolitan area that does not have access to a rink. Not only that, there are 20 metropolitan areas over a population of 100,000. Topeka is one of 2 that does not have access to an ice rink. Topeka at 150,000 is the biggest. The only other municipality over 100,000 is Columbia, Missouri, with 124,000. So I am greatly in support of Topeka having an ice rink, and I truly believe that if the ice rink is given full opportunity, it will thrive. With that, that's all I wanted to mention, and thank you for thank you for listening.
Thank you for that data and good information. Next.
And next we have Nancy Dutton.
Hi, Nancy. Nancy, we can't hear you.
So she is still muted on her side. That is available at the bottom. Okay.
I found it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. I also would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am impressed with this plan. As I see it here, I think it covers a lot of areas. The one thing I'm disappointed in And I'm speaking, of course, to pickleball because most of you know that. But I am disappointed to see that go from 20 courts to 16 courts. I really think for us to draw major tournaments, we need the larger facility. When you invested in us and helped us and we redid Hughes tennis courts and made them into pickleball courts, you know, we were the pride of the state. People came here and wanted to know how to do this. So they've taken off and done this. And for us to be able to compete and bring those tournaments here, we really need at least a 20 court area. And it would seem to me that there is still room there to do that. So I just wanted to add that, and I thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Craig, do we have anybody else?
I believe Eldana, and I have one caller that's a person who has called in. I don't have a name associated with who that is, so I'll allow them to talk, and if that's who it is. So they are currently muted on their side.
Is that 0840?
Their number ends in 2306.
They're not showing up.
So they're still an attendee. They can talk, but they are muted on their side.
Can you tell them how to unmute?
For the phone, I click ask to unmute, and it should have them hit a number to complete that.
You can unmute your phone by *6.
Okay.
Nancy? Oh, that's Nancy. Okay. Okay, so I'm not hearing them. So why don't we let Eldana talk, and then we'll come back to our other participant.
And that number who called in may not be the person we were expecting, so.
Okay, all right. So is Eldana the last person?
So I do not have her as having joined. So that's why I assumed the number that I didn't know was her.
Okay. All right. This is Terry, the chair. So I actually got an email from her at 4:30. And it's very short, and I will read it to the group, and then we'll take board comments about the plan and any feedback. Hello, Terry. I see Family Park is on the agenda tonight. I just want to make sure you are aware that since we have not seen the design, there are several things that are important to note. We should have 20 courts, as this will help attract larger tournaments. There should be at least half with lights. There should be restroom facilities close to the courts, and there should be adequate space to set up lawn chairs and canopies around the courts. Thank you, Eldana. So, okay. So now we're going to proceed to any of the board members who want to make a comment about the Family Park Master Plan that they've been shown tonight. Joe,
Teresa would like to say something.
Okay.
Yes, Joe Ledbetter would like to say something.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe. And then Teresa, I'll do you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so there's a number of things I noticed. First of all, in the input, it looked like we had a multiple slice pie, and almost nothing except one item had more than 5% input for that item, which included ice skating. Now, let me give you a little quick background. I'm an ice skater, and I like to ice skate, and I'm sad that this city has never had really much in the way of ice skating available other than Expo would occasionally rent to the public, but most times not. What I'm seeing missing here, and I'd like it in the future, is I want a fiscal note or a budget amount put on each amenity. And it can be a range. I'm okay with that. but I'm pretty sure ice skating rinks with buildings cost a lot of money. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but when I look at the amount of deferred maintenance in our park system and our community centers and our bike trails that we already have and pools, I'm going, we're already 10 million in the hole. So I need to know that we are doing good cost benefit ratios for cost as to what we're putting in over here. Things that don't cost a lot of money long term because they don't cost a lot of maintenance or personnel are things like playgrounds, bike trails, BMX. Those things don't cost a lot. So you can get a lot of bang for the buck with those kind of items. Those are the kind of concerns I have. I'd also like to see fiscal notes for operation of any of these buildings, which would include the ice skating facility, but also the, curiously enough, the pro shop for the golf course. And I do know, based on numbers I've already seen, that that golf course does not pay for itself. It's subsidized by the Lake Shawnee golf course. So when I see these other types of items creep into this, I want to know who's going to pay for it. Are you expecting this to come out at $10 million? Are we going to spread this $10 million out into other areas? When you say phases, what kind of phases are you talking about? 20 years, 30 years? I need more information about how these things are laid out budget-wise. So I want to see a lot more numbers, and I will go ahead and let other people talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Teresa, you're next.
Okay, thank you. One thing I see, and all this is great, but I am a 66-year-old woman that can barely walk because of her knees. I'm in a time of my life that I want to sit back and relax. I don't see much of that. It's all like a lot of movement. What we used to have, and this is what I enjoyed, and I was very young at this time, 71, I was 16 years old, almost 17. The outdoor Minigers had an amphitheater. They played live music out there where everybody could come out and enjoy themselves, relax, kick back, and have a good time. I would like to see something stuck in the tree somewhere or somewhere in there or something like that, because you can also double use that amphitheater for a lot of things. And if you have to, sometimes charge for people to come out and listen to some of the bands and stuff, because you'd be surprised that you can get really good bands that'll come out and play for nothing. But I'd like to see something like that for somebody like me that can't do all this other stuff anymore. If I tried to play pickleball, I'd be on my face the first step I took. So, I can't enjoy hardly anything that's out there. I'd like to have one thing I could sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll jump in there real quick and say to that, Teresa, that there will be, as part of this, there will be a conscious effort to incorporating kind of those amenities to just sit and enjoy nature, be able to sit and enjoy performances, things like that. And so while they may not be shown specifically here, as the design moves forward and as we dig into design, deeper into design, we'll look at those aspects. Those aspects will definitely be a part of this park.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Anybody else? Casey?
Terry, yeah, I'd like to speak. I would just first like to say the whole group, I mean, this is a really comprehensive plan. I definitely echo Joe's comments about, finding the right order to put these items in, as well as specifically looking at some of the lower maintenance cost, longer term items. So I think this is a beautiful design, and really appreciate the natural aspects of how you guys have managed to keep the tree line there, essentially, as well as play with the water. So just really, it looks absolutely beautiful.
Okay, thank you, Casey. Jim?
First of all, I want to tell everybody, great job, guys. You've really created almost 3 parks in one with all the different things tying together. Couple points of clarification on the activity center. Is the discussion about an ice rink, is that for a full-time year-round ice system? And then secondly, is there any space within that activity center for any other types of team sports, or does the, can you delve into the purposes of the activity center a little more as far as those aspects?
I'll just say a little bit about it. It's drawn there. It's I think about a 35,000 square foot facility, and it's conceived as an indoor activity center. I think as it goes forward, that's really for Parks and Rec to determine what that indoor activity is. I think as a placeholder in the plan, it's looked at as what would this overall park look like, and how would a indoor facility fit into that. And so that's really the level that we took it at this master plan.
Yeah, Commissioner Martin, I'd say we definitely, created a space for a building that would accommodate an ice rink or an indoor soccer field, some of those larger indoor sports spaces. But, certainly putting something such as that on this park would, merit some additional study in terms of, long-term operation costs and the real economic cost benefit. More detailed studies that can vary depending on the use you want to see in there, and studies that were outside the scope of, what we were trying to do. We are at least confident that here's a place where you could put a use like that in the plan. It would fit there. You'd be able to provide the parking, the utilities, and whatnot to serve it. And this would be a great spot for it in comparison to other uses within the park.
Thank you. Dick, go ahead, proceed.
Yes, I'm going to be negative on a couple items, but with qualifications. In the first place, this destination park is good if you want to design it with that type of title. When I saw the article about the ice rink, if we do this in phases, I think pickleball. Of course, I don't see the picture that y'all are seeing on the Zoom, but I was at that meeting where we had the three of the pictures, so I've got some idea in my mind of what's going on. This is it. The ice rink should be like in phase 4. If we're doing this in phases, I mean, I'm talking way down the road. We've already hung a white elephant around the Parks and Rec with the railroad station, or saying, y'all know I spoke negatively against that. We can't afford this right now. I'm with Joe. Anything that's being done, we need budget ideas. I've heard none, and we're probably not even to that area yet. But breaking this down in phases, of course, the pickleball courts, big parking lot, all of that I can go along with. But the one thing that we're not thinking about is that location out there. What about the kids in central Topeka or east Topeka? We're sitting that all the way out there off of Urish Road. How are those kids going to take advantage of, and I'll pick on the ice rink again. What if they want to, they're getting out there is practically an impossibility. I don't think that we considered that. If an ice rink would be something that would help the city of Topeka, then I'd vote for bringing it more into the central part of town. If we have some property that we've got, Gage Park, for example, would be a perfect park. place for us, an ice rink. But I just don't think that setting it out there, from the article I read, is maybe 900. I think the number was a 900 participant projection in a city of 150,000 approximately. Do we put our Parks and Recreation Department in further debt by operating something like that for such a small percentage of the population in Shawnee County, in Topeka and Shawnee County? But if we're going to do the skating rink, if that's going to remain in the master plan, I would rather see it come back into the center part of Topeka so everybody can take advantage of it. And I just wanted to get that opinion out there. You're leaving a lot of people, a lot of kids, if we're going to talk kids, out of this picture because they will not have the ability to be getting out to Yarish Road all the time from, say, Central Park and 17th Street. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Dick. I do have a question for maybe Joe knows the answer to this, or Tim. Is there bus service to this area? Like to the pool?
I'm being told that there is currently not bus service to the pool.
Thank you.
I'm on that board and there's not bus service out there.
Thank you.
Can I jump in here again? Matter of fact, I think the bus service is talking about possibly reducing some of their routes right here in the city of Topeka.
Yeah, that's true. I just wanted to know if we.
Teresa, I have a comment to make.
Okay.
Do I have the floor?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. At one time, when the ice skating rink was mentioned, before we even had it at the expo, there was land that the city of Topeka was going to buy by the water tower downtown. It fell through, but that was where originally the city of Topeka wanted to put the skating rink. And that would be right downtown, and we'll try to build downtown. Maybe some of the guys from downtown will want to incorporate that in some of their plans. But I'm telling you, that would be the center of Topeka for everybody, especially it would be closer to the people that cannot afford to go clear way out there, because I don't think they understand. There's a lot of people in Topeka, Kansas that do not have vehicles, can't afford vehicles, and they walk everywhere. That's how we lost a little girl over here in North Topeka in November, because she was walking. And I have a lot of people do that. But the skating rink, I think, should be put close to downtown like that. Have the downtown group incorporate that. At one time, they was supposed to put a skating rink down there in their little plaza, and I haven't heard any more about that. But I know we want it to be covered, so that would be a good area.
Thank you, Teresa. Anybody else on the advisory committee that would like to make a comment or ask questions? Hang on, Jim. Okay, Jim, proceed.
I guess the issue of this ice rink seems to me that, years ago when it was going to be downtown, I don't know whether an economic feasibility study was performed or not. That's a question, but I think before it can be addressed and muddle this issue out here, some type of economic feasibility review should be done. And indeed, if an ice rink can sustain a revenue-based presence, that needs to be determined, and then maybe where it might be located would be determined. But I think it's muddling this issue of trying to get the basic park amenities established out here. So I'm not necessarily against an ice rink, but the feasibility of it, I think, needs to be demonstrated in some manner, and this park shouldn't be held hostage to a lot of discussion about it, in the sense of confusing people about what or what might not be out here. So feasibility of the economics. Thanks.
Chair, this is Joe Ledbetter.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
I think it's important, and although I somewhat agree with Jim about the ice skating rink, that I don't want to stop a whole plan because we're not sure where that should be. It's in this plan, so we'll discuss it. But I would like to see fiscal notes attached to each of these items. They know what this stuff costs, or can make good guesses. I'd like to know the dollar value, not only of the construction of the items, but I would also like to have a fiscal note about the cost of the operation of any of the buildings. Buildings require personnel, they require a lot of maintenance, and they require utilities. And so I think it's good to have that discussion now so that people can say, okay, well, you know, we could probably afford that, and there's good cost benefit ratios, lots of kids for that, but there's not a whole lot for this. How do we divide up $10 million or put it in other places throughout the community? I think that's very relevant to the discussion, as well as some kind of phase and timeline that is proposed. I'm not asking them to pull out a crystal ball and tell me this one will be 20 years or 30 years. I'm just asking them to propose timelines that these are the people thinking of this. They're taking our ideas and putting them together. So also tell me what you think is the timeline that we would be able to do this as a community. Thank you.
Okay, as the chair, I need to say that we have, we've hit our 7 o'clock mark. I don't know if there is more information or more comments that people would like to make, or if you want to have more discussion. If so, we're going to need a motion to extend our meeting to do that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, it's been made
I'll
to
second
extend.
for 10 minutes.
The motion has been made and seconded to extend our meeting for 10 more minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the meeting's been extended for 10 minutes. Thank you. Who else would like to talk? Derek, did you have your hand up? No.
No,
Okay.
ma'am. I was scratching my forehead. Thank you.
Okay.
Gary, I'd like to talk if I may.
Proceed, Tim.
Well, I just want to speak a little bit to Joe's comments. We have been putting together costs associated with each of the amenities on the plan. I don't think we're at a point right now where I could tell you operating costs on an annual basis for some of these facilities, but we definitely have at least ballpark figures on what each of these would cost to construct, and or at least we're getting there, we're close. And we imagine that. I also want to take this time to remind everybody that we will be bringing this back up to the commission, or bringing this to the commission for final approval. And maybe it's approved, maybe it isn't, but at that time, I think we will try to discuss some phasing options that for the various funding levels that have been discussed, if that makes sense. I mean, we have, you know, I think we'll try to roll out a phase that here's what we could get for 8 million, you know, here's what we could get for 5 million, here's what we could get for 30 million, you know, and then there'll have to be some tough decisions made by all of us, you know, on what prioritizing what we think we can afford, what we think will get our best bang for the buck, so to speak. And but anyway, I just wanted to let Joe know we are working on that, and we will definitely have something relatively soon that we'll be able to share.
This is Terry. I have a question. I have a question for Mr. Crowell. So this is considered new construction, and in the contract between the city and the county says that the advisory committee, you know, is to review it and make a recommendation. Is that your understanding?
Yes, you don't
Okay.
have to make a recommendation, but you certainly can on these. You can make a recommendation. You can say we have no recommendation, or you can recommend certain parts of it or not.
Okay, thank you. So what a couple of the advisory committee members have asked for, Tim, is for fiscal note projections to build and to maintain. So there's actually two components, so that if we have to prioritize the 10 million, and I need to clarify something, I thought of the 10 million, that 2 million of it was being set aside to finish that portion of the trail. Do I have that right or wrong?
You have that right.
Okay, so
but it's yet to be seen how much of that 2 million we'll actually need.
well, I don't remember how that resolution read, but I do remember the significant discussion about putting $2 million of it aside.
Correct.
So somebody would need to keep us informed about how much of it is going to be needed as part of the discussion going forward. So right now we're talking 8 million. Okay. So we're going to need to have those numbers, if you can get them for us, for our February meeting. Okay. Additionally, Laura Burton left. She emailed me, or she did send me a text message that she'd like a copy of this PowerPoint.
I would also like to have a copy of it.
Okay, so I just want, if, I know this gets a little technical, but if we, Tim, and Randy, if you could please try to get a copy of the PowerPoint and electronically send it to all of us, that would be helpful. Then I have a couple technical questions. First, I want to thank the individuals, Michael, Brock, and Nancy, and then Eldana, who are committed to providing feedback on behalf of the groups they represent. I think that's important from a community perspective. I know that you all are very passionate. You can tell that you're passionate about the desire for the family park in the area that you're promoting. The first question I have is either for the design team or the staff, is it has always been, the pickleball folks have always asked for 20. How did you make the decision to take it down to 16? Or why did you make the decision to take it down to 16?
I'll answer that question. First of all, I want to just point out this is a plan. And so as Zach mentioned earlier in the presentation, I don't think we have enough money to get every single thing that we want to build in this plan, especially up front. I mean, maybe 20 years we could do something like this. I think that we feel like 16 courts is a good number of courts, especially when you couple it with the 18 that we already have. I think that the pickleball group will still have a chance to come before the commission and have that discussion about why maybe they feel 20 is necessary. I think that it would be in their best interest to do what you're asking us to do, which is come up with some idea on how many tournaments they think they can bring in, what those tournaments will, how much revenue will those tournaments generate, how much, how will that actually help the department operate that facility. I think those things need to be discussed, but essentially we felt like 16 fit well into the space, and again, we're trying to pare down the cost where we can.
Okay, so what you're saying is really it's cost driven.
Not entirely, no. I mean, but I think that's a part of it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then the second thing is, I was surprised with the bike pump track. I do not remember that on the first survey. I remember a BMX, but I don't remember a bike pump track. When did that come into as part of the solicitation? When did that come into being one of the recommendations?
Zach, I don't know if you're still on here. I think you probably
Yep.
are. I believe
Yeah.
the contract was on the three concepts that, or at least one of the three concepts that we loaded early. The first
Yeah.
concept.
And it's I think it was seen as a complement to the BMX track that is already in town. And that the pump track is a little bit different of a kind of a different of an activity in terms of, and it's actually open to kind of more diverse range of bikers than say a BMX track. And so I think in my mind, I think there's been, or in my understanding, there's been talk of potentially maybe long term the BMX track comes out here, but that a pump track was really kind of the understanding that we had as far as kind of the main bike amenity that could be built out here.
I would really encourage any of you to get on YouTube and search for pump tracks and get an idea of what they are and how they operate. I'll be honest, I was a little bit anti-pump track when this started because I didn't know much about it. And as I've learned about it, I've learned about the cost to build one, which is relatively inexpensive. The fact that there aren't many in this area, so I think it would be unique to Topeka, and I think it would be extremely popular, extremely popular. So that's kind of where I lie on a pump track.
Well, those are the same arguments that the ice rink people gave us, except the cost.
I'm not arguing with the ice rink people. I would. The only
Yeah.
thing I would make is that it's.
I was just wondering because I didn't see it in any of the lists, but I will go back through that first. I have the first survey results, and I will go back and see if somebody listed this and I missed it.
It
Okay.
may not be on the list. I mean, yeah.
You don't think it's on that list?
I don't remember right off the top of my head. I'm just saying that it's a possibility that it's not on the list. I don't think that necessarily rules it out as a possible amenity for the park.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say, Commissioner Roberts, I'm pretty sure pump track was not a item listed on the first survey. I think we did list, some level of bike amenity out there.
You did.
And thinking that, certainly this place has room for some bike activity. It was really the follow-up engagement we had with the bike community, like Zach mentioned, that led us to see the pump track as maybe the ideal option for out here. It's too small a place for mountain bike trails, and the BMX BMX type track was a little bit too intensive an activity. But the pump track, which is a different kind of thing, seemed like it would fit well with this landscape and with the other uses, and is, like Tim and Zach have already mentioned, something unique and not already offered. So it ended up being an option on at least two of the three concept plans that got floated for survey in October.
Thank you. The next question I have, wait a minute. The next question I have is about number 15, which is the clubhouse and the pro shop. So that is a complete, they're going to demolish what we have, and then they're going to build a new, is the concept to build a new clubhouse and pro shop?
Yes, that would be the concept, correct.
Okay, so I toured that, and it's aged, I will say that, but it does have excellent storage for all the carts and all their equipment. So would that mean that all of that would be redone as well, or just the clubhouse and pro shop?
Well, let me back up, because we have discussed a couple of options. I think with a phased in approach, we would probably leave the current maintenance facility, which is kind of around number 5 on the map, on the current map. We would probably leave that there early, and then possibly convert the old clubhouse into a maintenance facility if we were able to build a new clubhouse. But I would like to make a comment about it being excellent. We actually don't have enough room to store all of our carts in the current location.
Really? They look stored to me. I didn't see any really out that day, but okay, how many can't you store? What's the number?
But I know that it is not sufficient.
Okay, insufficient. Okay. Thank you. All right.
We're running
so
out of time.
We are.
Terry?
Dick, did you have something else?
Well, yeah, I was kind of watching the clock here. Do we have anything left on the agenda?
Nope.
That needs to be
Well,
taken care of?
Yes, we've taken public comment. We just need board comment, which I'm taking. So I don't know that we have anything else.
All right.
So let's find out if anybody else has any more comments so we can end this.
Okay. Does anyone, it's a little hard unless you raise your hand, and I've got a lot of people on the phone. So if you'll let me know if you would like to make another comment, that would be helpful. Okay, seeing none.
Here in the silence, I'll make a motion that I make the motion now that we end the meeting.
I second it.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? Wait a minute, you get to debate it. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone, and thank
Good
you to
night.
our
Thank
guests,
you.
and
Thank
you
you
to
all.
Craig
Yep.
Good job,
and
guys.
for helping us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
I was just a personal question. On our schedule for the rest of the year, will we continue? Do we have any interruptions that could cause a Tuesday night, last Tuesday of the month problem for having a meeting and have to move it to another day or something like that? Or is everything pretty clear that we'll be doing this every Tuesday till at least November?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to get it on my calendar.
Okay. Well, and we'll have Randy send that out. Thank you. That is a good point.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.